Hello and welcome to our webinar, Know Your Numbers, Track Your Leading KPIs in OfficeRnD, part of our webinar series that we are organizing approximately every month. So yeah, stay tuned because more webinars are coming, but let's focus now on our KPIs. Today's speakers will be myself, Miryana, and my colleague Rado, both part of the Customer Success and Onboarding team. Brief intro about me. I'm in the coworking industry for around 7 or 8 years. I used to work 4 different coworking spaces around Europe. I also did an extensive scientific research on the coworking movement, and in the last year and a half, I'm part of the customer success and onboarding team of Office R&D. I'll now briefly pass the stage to my colleague Rado as well, so he can share some information about himself.
Hello guys, it's Rado here. So I have been part of Office R&D customer service team for almost 2 years. Probably I have worked with some of you. Happy to see and hear you again. I hope we are glad to have you, and I hope the webinar is going to be beneficial for you. We are going to share a lot of insights, how you can use Office R&D and Office R&D reporting features to track your KPIs. And now I will pass the stage again to Mira, and she's going to start with the details.
Okay, thanks, Rado. So we'll continue now with the bigger picture around the KPIs and how KPIs are actually used in the flexible workspace world. But first of all, let's focus on why you actually need KPIs. First of all, you need to set KPIs in order to follow strategic goals and to reach operational targets. Together with that, KPIs will help you to monitor your company's health and to measure your progress and how you develop and grow. Moreover, having KPIs allow you to make adjustments in your business strategy and allows you actually to stay on track throughout the changes. Together with that, having KPIs allows you to solve any problems that are coming on the way and open a horizon for tackling new opportunities. And last but not least, having KPIs allows you to analyze the patterns over time. So you can look back in the past, see what happened, see what's the present situation, compare, go back to your KPIs, reset them, and just find the right pattern for yourself. In order to bring a bit more clarity about the KPIs in the coworking and flexible workspaces, I would like to share a couple of examples of KPIs so that you can get an idea. Maybe you can embrace some of these KPIs for your business. The numbers we have mentioned here are just an example, so they should be really addressed and set according to your business model. But examples of KPIs in the coworking and flexible workspaces could be to increase the quarterly revenue target with 15%, for instance, or double the number of members within a year. This KPI, I would imagine that would be presented in most of the business plans of the flexible workspaces, especially due to the COVID crisis and the big the big number of members who actually left their co-working spaces, started home office, and so on. So I believe for most of you now, the biggest and the main focus is actually to bring the members back to your spaces. Another KPI example could be to decrease the average number of churned members in the next 6 months. So this, because we talked about patterns within time. So if you had a pattern of members who were churning in the past 6 months, maybe you want to change that now and actually reduce and decrease this number in the upcoming 6 months and compare the change within this kind of a 1-year period. Another KPI example is to increase the average stay or the so-called retention to minimum 1 year. Maybe this won't be really feasible for flex and dedicated desk users, but this is uh, kind of a normal goal for private office users, and minimum 1 year could be a good KPI to have. Another one would be to triple the number of hot desk memberships for the next quarter, as the hot desks allow you to sell more hot desk memberships than the real desk you have in the space due to their specification. So you can focus on actually tripling the number, especially now with the, again, after the COVID crisis, more and more people are deciding to actually use hot desks and come to the space once or twice a week instead of doing this kind of a dedication to come every day and use their dedicated desk on a daily basis. Um, another KPI could be to sustain an occupancy level of minimum 70%. Perhaps this could be also a smaller percentage. Again, due to the COVID crisis, it is also important to have realistic KPIs. And last example that I would like to give is to maintain, for instance, the minimum gap between resource and cash occupancy. We'll focus more on what this exactly means in the following slides when Rado will take you to a journey in the reports and the numbers that OfficeRnD can provide you with. And here comes the next question, actually, how to define and set your own KPIs, because having examples can help you to visualize how the KPIs should sound, but actually to make them your own KPIs needs a bit more effort. So here we're sharing a few ideas how you can approach this KPI setting up process. So start from your business model and actually understand what your organizational objectives are. And choose the main parameters you'll be tracking, and be realistic and don't choose too many parameters because you won't be able to track them anyway. Um, Once you have the parameters outlined, break them down into sub-parameters. Try to set targets for each parameter based on the desired outcome. So try to imagine your ideal scenario, of course, again, being realistic and taking into account the current environment and the current situation post or even still during COVID. Um, Remember to delegate responsibilities within your team, because keeping track of all the KPIs yourself would be hard task. So delegate the responsibilities. A very important part is also to set periods to review the performance. It could be on a monthly, quarterly, or yearly basis. It depends how big and how big the KPIs are, and if they're more kind of a short term or a long term. And last but not least, keep in mind that this is an iterative process. So once you choose the KPIs, maybe in the next quarter you have to review them, adjust them, change them, and continue. So this is an ongoing process and it's not set in stone. And together with what I'm highlighting is um, try to have your KPIs to be smart. And what does actually this mean? So the KPIs should be specific, and the measurement that you get for the KPIs should have a specific purpose for the organization. Also, they should be measurable. You should be able to convert these numbers and compare them with goals or with some past performance. Together with that, the KPI should be achievable, as I mentioned that a couple of times already. So this should be something that your teammates can actually do in the set period, because otherwise, if they since the beginning look impossible to achieve, this would influence also your teammates' motivation and their sense of fulfillment in the end of the quarter will be very low. Together with that, the KPI should be realistic or relevant. So um, the KPI should be linked to the overall goals and success criteria you have for your organization. And the T states for time targeted, which means that again, as I said, the KPIs you're setting should be set for a relevant time period, and you should have some time to actually measure them, review them, and then continue. And so now we'll dive deeper a bit more into how actually you can use OfficeRnD in order to track the KPIs once you have them set. I'll briefly show you the main features you can actually utilize in OfficeRnD. First of all, you can set targets, you can track your members' turnover, you can analyze the revenue data, and you can measure your occupancy. Now my colleague Rado will get into detail about these topics, and by the end of the webinar, we'll answer your questions.
Hello guys, Mira, thanks for the intro, and let's dive into more details. So first of all, you need to ensure that your targets are properly set in OfficeRnD. And after looking the webinar, if you have some concerns about that, you can contact our support team or your onboarding representative, and we can help you to ensure that your targets are properly configured. So first of all, you need to upload your resources in OfficeRnD and ensure they are properly configured. And then you can define revenue targets per resource, per floor, or per location. You need to configure your revenue accounts and set up your hot desk coefficient. Now we'll navigate to OfficeRnD so we can go over those in more details. So as you know, in OfficeRnD you can create resources. And when you are creating resources, you need to ensure that you're properly defining their targets. Like for example, if we navigate to private offices resource type and we go to create a resource, we can specify a predefined plan for that resource. And after that, the software allows us to set a target for a revenue, target in terms of desks that are available in that office, and you can also set the area target. After that data is confirmed, you will be able to track your occupancy revenue targets for that resource. The other important part is to configure your revenue accounts. In order to do that, you need to navigate to our settings, then billing, and then we have accounts here. By default, OfficeRnD has 4 default revenue accounts. You can customize them and you can create more if you need that. Each pre-configured revenue account can afterwards be used and connected to either your billing plans or your resource rates. So when you're editing for a plan, for example, in the advanced settings tab, you have this option to actually link that plan to a pre-configured revenue account. So having revenue accounts actually enables you to track your revenue in more details and customize how you want to split your revenue streams and have record about them. The last point that we have in terms of setting targets is to define the hot desk coefficient. To do that, you need to again navigate to settings, then platform, then space, and here is the hot desk coefficient you can set. Basically, the hot desk coefficient defines how many memberships you want to sell for each hot desk that you have available in your space. So that's it about the targets. As I already mentioned, if you feel like your targets are not properly configured, you can contact us and we can help you in evaluating if they're properly set and help you to configure them if they are not. We have one tip here. Actually, you can try to analyze the market in your city area, the prices of your competitors, and set, as Mira already mentioned, set relative targets, like achievable targets that you can actually meet, but targets that are not too easy to be reached at the same point. And yeah, basically that's it about the targets. We're going to move now to how you can track your members' turnover. We have a couple of insights here. There is one related to members report in OfficeRnD, and it's called members report. So some insights we can share here while we're looking at the report. You can find it under reports in OfficeRnD, and then it's right at the bottom. It's called members. So what we can say here, you have the information about the new members, the members you lost for each month you're tracking. Then you have the total number of active members, the net new churned members, which is the difference between new and lost members for each month. And then we have the net growth. The net growth is the net new churned members divided to the active members of the previous month. The net growth is actually the ratio that is probably more, is giving you the best information about if your space is growing or no. A couple of insights we can share here, like you can track if you have a stable flow of new members each month, and if you don't have it, probably you can focus some efforts on marketing campaigns so you can attract more customers. At the same time, if there is a lot of members that are churning from your space on a monthly basis, probably you can try to figure out why that is happening. You can organize short exit interviews. You can also collect information from your current members and conduct some anonymous surveys. And you can try to work on the problematic areas that you identify through those surveys and processes. One more thing that we can share here and is not part of the OfficeRnD reports yet, but could provide you with a very valuable information, is the so-called retention rate. So the retention rate could be pretty easily calculated. Actually, it is equal to the active members of the current month minus the new members for the current month, and you need to divide that to the active members for the previous month. Analyzing the retention rate could give you a tendency such as seasoning, internal changes in the physical space or the community or your team. It's relatively easy to calculate the retention rate using our members report. So when you navigate to the members report, you can export it. And when you do that, you can simply apply the formula that we showed you. So I will just quickly show you how that could happen. So we have, let's say we want to calculate the retention rate here. So we need to subtract the new members from the active members for the current month and divide that to the active members of the previous month, and then convert that to a percentage. And you can pretty easily calculate the retention rate that way. So why the retention rate is valuable? Actually, you can compare the retention rate with your net growth percentage, because the net growth gives you a sign if your space is attracting new members with a good pace, and that might be true. But if at the same time your retention rate is going down, that might be a signal that you're doing pretty well in terms of marketing and sales, but actually you have some problems in retaining your customers. If that is happening, you can think about some retention, developing a retention program, or trying to identify what are the reasons behind you losing your members. And now let's go to a couple of tips related to how you can attract more members and retain those that you already have. OfficeRnD integrates pretty well with HubSpot, so you can explore that integration, and HubSpot allows you to automate a lot of emails and the communication with your members so you can keep them in line. You can also use Zapier to integrate OfficeRnD with MailChimp, for example, and keep your members and prospects informed about what is happening in your space and engage them. And you can also use the collaboration section in OfficeRnD to actually support your retention efforts. It allows you to create posts, send messages to your members, send emails, and so on. So let's now go to probably the most interesting area of the reports and the KPIs, the revenue. So there are a couple of reports in OfficeRnD that are related to the revenue and give you some statistics about it. We'll take a look at the most popular of them: the memberships report, the projected revenue report, and the invoiced revenue. So let's start with the memberships report. So what we have here, we have information about the number of new memberships, terminated memberships, active memberships. Then we have the difference between new and terminated memberships. We have the total revenue that you are generating from the new memberships. Then we have the revenue that you are losing because of the terminated memberships. We have the total revenue generated for the month. Then we have this net new versus lost revenue, which is actually showing the difference between new revenue and lost revenue. And what is probably the most interesting percentage here, we have the net new lost versus previous month. So this ratio is calculated when we are dividing the difference between new and lost revenue to the total revenue for the previous month. So if that number is growing and is positive, that is definitely a true sign that you're doing pretty well in terms of increasing your revenue. You can filter the report by dates. You can also filter it by plan if you want to track how your different types of memberships are performing. This could be really helpful to identify the memberships that are performing well and those that are not. And you can make changes if that is necessary once you identify which are the problematic services you're offering. So now let's go to the projected revenue report. To further analyze your revenue, you can use the projected revenue and the invoiced revenue reports that are located on the revenue section of OfficeRnD reports module. So the projected revenue is showing you estimated revenue based on the memberships and one-off fees that are currently existing in your account. The pre-built version of the report actually is selecting all revenue accounts that you have, and it is showing the information by member, and you have a short summary at the top of it. You can also structure the projected revenue report by location. If you have more than one locations and you want to check how they are performing and compare them, the projected revenue report could easily give you information about if you expect to lose revenue in the upcoming months, or if you're expecting to generate more revenue compared to the previous months. You can also pretty easily see the source of the revenue, and which areas are performing worse than others. So for example, if we take a look at this drop from October to November, which is a relatively small drop, but still, we can easily see that the drop is coming from the bookings fee revenue account. And on the other hand, the private offices, dedicated desks, and the hot desks are performing the same way they did in the previous months. Projected revenue report could be also pretty useful if you want to track and further analyze some of your marketing campaigns. For example, if you're doing campaign that is targeting acquiring more customers from dedicated desks, you can easily take the number uh, for the revenue that this campaign is generating from OfficeRnD and compare that to the costs and the marketing investments you're doing for that campaign. And the last report we want to show you when it comes to revenue is the invoiced revenue report. It is, while the projected revenue is built over the memberships and the one-off fees value, the invoiced revenue report is built on the already invoiced memberships and one-off fees. So it's not including upcoming periods if they are not yet invoiced. What you can see here, you have a summary of all customers, and then you have details per customer. You can see the invoiced revenue for each month. You can see what portion of this revenue is still due, and at the top you can see what portion of the due revenue is coming from overdue invoices. This is the number in that kind of a pinkish tag, and the other number is showing the revenue that is due, but the invoices are not overdue yet. So this is pretty much it about the revenue reports. You can be very creative in terms of analyzing them and get ideas of how you can optimize your business and attract more revenue. You can compare the invoiced revenue to your projected revenue to see if some portion of you missed to invoice your clients about something. And yeah, an important info here, if your organization is applying taxes, you should be aware that the projected revenue does not include the tax, while the invoiced revenue actually includes the taxes as well. And we'll finish our webinar with the occupancy reports, but before that, a few tips about the revenue. You can integrate OfficeRnD with a payment gateway in order to collect your payments quicker. You can integrate OfficeRnD with a lot of payment gateways. You can further check that on the OfficeRnD integration module. Also, one pretty useful tip, if you want to dig deeper in your invoiced revenue and further analyze it, you can export it. OfficeRnD allows you to select like filter invoices, then you can export the invoices that are already filtered. The invoice export includes information about the revenue accounts of the line items, the product codes, the data about the taxes, the price per unit, and so on. So you can pretty much create whatever kind of reports you want from that one. And now let's go to measuring occupancy and utilization in OfficeRnD. So we'll start with the occupancy report, and probably the most interesting insight we can share when it comes to occupancy is comparing your workstation occupancy to your cash occupancy. So as you can see here, we have revenue occupancy, which is your cash occupancy. We have occupancy per desk, and also we have occupancy per unit, which in our case is showing the private office occupancy per unit. And we also have the area occupancy here. So by comparing, for example, the cash revenue, which we have here, to your workstation revenue, that can give you information about how you're performing. So if your workstation occupancy is relatively high, probably 80–85% or above, but your revenue occupancy or cash occupancy at the same time is lower, probably below 70%, that is definitely a clear sign that probably you're giving too high discounts to your customers, or it might be that you have set too high targets for revenue targets for your resources. On the other hand, if your workstation revenue is super high, like 95% and above, that might be a threat, because if some of your big customers wants to grow, you might not have the available space to allow them to grow within your space, and they might decide to look for other options. You can further check the numbers here. There are a lot, so you can check them. If you have any questions, you can always message our support team or our team for more info. The other pretty useful report related to occupancy that we have is the resources report. It could be found again under the occupancy and utilization reports. The main difference between the resources and the occupancy report is that in the resources report we have a summary of the occupancy, of the combined occupancy for all resource types available in your space. Something that might be useful for you when looking into that report, you can see that here we have revenue per desk, and we have that ratio for each resource type, and it could give you clear information about which resource is performing better than the others. So you can either decide to invest more and popularize that resource, or you can consider why the other resources are not performing that well. Some helpful info: when you hover over this information circles here, you can actually see how each metric is calculated. So that's it about the resources. We have few tips here as well. Actually, one tip. So when you're analyzing your occupancy metrics, try to look for tendencies. Look if some resources are staying unoccupied for a longer period of time. If that is happening, you can try to understand why that is happening. You might work from that resource for a day or a week to see if there might be an issue with the light, the temperature, or the furniture might not be comfortable enough, or there might be a street noise. So try to find why actually those resources are not occupied and change something so you can increase your occupancy. So that was pretty much it when it comes to OfficeRnD and how you can use our features to track your KPIs. Now we have some time for a short Q&A session, in which we are going to cover a lot of questions submitted by you. Okay, so now we'll answer some of the most relevant to the topic questions. One question coming from Chat Turner is there a way to configure office occupancy to be based on the office and not the desk? And actually, I think we already covered that in a way. So if you go to the occupancy report, we have both desk and private office occupancy. So the desk occupancy is based on the size in terms of desks of each office, while the private office occupancy is based on the actual units that you have in your space. Another question that is kind of related to the same topic is my private office occupancy shows two numbers, 5 and 17, for example. What does this indicate? So if we go back to, let's say, March here, I think I prepared kind of an example about that. So this is the use case mentioned in the question. We have one number outside brackets and we have a number inside the brackets. So the number outside the brackets is actually the number of desks that were occupied for the full month. This means those 45 desks were occupied from 1st till the end of May. while there were the 50 inside the brackets actually shows the total number of desks that have been partially occupied within May. So in that case, we have 5 desks that were occupied for some part of May, but not for the full month. If you want to see more details who those resources were, you can track the occupancy interval report. And if I select May here, which was the month with different partially occupied offices, I will be able to see that in my demo space, actually this private office number 1, it was occupied from 1st till 20th of May, and then it was available for 11 days at the end of May. Another very good question is, can you show invoiced revenue according to the period being invoiced? For example, if I invoice for September in August, it shows as August invoiced. What we can say here is that the invoiced revenue report depends on the issue date of the invoices. And even if you're doing your bill run in August, you can still, and probably it's the better way to do it, you can still select 1st of September as the issue date of your invoices. So the invoiced revenue is built and detects the invoices based on their issue date. So the answer is yes. You just need to be careful when you're selecting your issue date. Another very good question, is there a way to have an itemized invoiced revenue report? As I already mentioned, you can export invoices in OfficeRnD, and when you export them, you can see a lot more information about each line item of the invoice. In order to export the invoices, you need to navigate to billing invoices, filter the invoices for a specific period of time. You can also include other filters, a status, label, and so on. Once you set the filters you want to apply, you can select the invoices you want to export, and you can go to this kind of a small arrow icon here. Select that you want to export the invoices, export a full list of them. And don't be scared about the number of columns that you're going to see here. If you're interested in creating presets, that is also available. What we have here, like you have the invoice number, and then you have each item from the invoice, and a lot of information on top of that. So this is a pretty useful export you can use to analyze your data in depth. Okay, so, and probably that was it about the Q&A session. We are going to check all other questions submitted by you, and probably we'll answer them in another form.
Okay, thank you guys. That was from our side. I hope you enjoyed the webinar today. If you have any questions, reach out to your onboarding representative, to our support team, reach out to us as well, Miryana and Rado at OfficeRnD.com, and we'll be happy to answer questions or kind of guide you to the right person to address your questions. So stay safe and hope to see you on the next webinar. Wish you a great day, evening, afternoon, or yeah, enjoy your time. Bye-bye.
Bye, guys.